Yes.
Yeah, from my understanding of, this is like a loud. From my understanding of reading your website and looking at all the debates and all the Q&A, I get the impression that evolution, if it were to be true, would not disprove theism.
Right.
But and you always, like, when you're answering the questions, you always tell them about intelligent design and stuff. But my question is, if Darwinian evolution were shown to be true, would that disprove not theism, but Christianity?
Mm-hmm. I think to preface my remarks, I want to reiterate what you said. Biological evolution in no way disproves theism. Indeed, recent National Center for Science Education editorial that came out last week said many, indeed probably most, evolutionary biologists are theists, according to this center, and said, therefore, we need to educate the public more about the fact that most evolutionary biologists believe in God, and that people like Dawkins and these others represent a very vocal but radical minority. Now, having said that, can one reconcile evolutionary biology with the Bible? So what this is a question about is about biblical inerrancy. It's a question about whether or not the Bible is accurate in what it says in Genesis chapter 1. And what I would say there is that this is going to depend upon the genre of literature that you take Genesis 1 to be. I taught a course several years ago on doctrine of creation, and as I poured myself into the Hebrew text of Genesis 1 and read commentaries and studied this, the more, or rather I should say, the less certain I became that I understood it. This chapter is a lot more subtle than just a sort of bare report of events that happened. It is a very theologically rich and stylized narrative. And I think that the view that God created the world in 6 consecutive 24-hour days is only one possible interpretation of that chapter, and that there are many different interpretations that are available to the biblically faithful Christian that don't involve 6 consecutive 24-hour days. And in fact, this is something that's been known to the church fathers for centuries. St. Augustine, in the late AD 300s, gave an interpretation of Genesis in which he postulated that God created certain potencies in life forms that then over time came to actualization and didn't even require special acts of creation along the way. And this wasn't a retreat in the face of modern science. This was 1,500 years prior to Darwin. So I think among educated Christians, it's always been known that Genesis is open to a very wide range of different interpretations that are quite consistent with different theories of evolutionary biology. So any doubts that I have about the contemporary neo-Darwinian theory of evolution would be scientific rather than biblical. As a biblical Christian, I'm completely open to follow the evidence where it leads. And I think that's one of the advantages of being a Christian, is that you can follow the evidence to where it leads. By contrast, the naturalist, for him, evolution is the only game in town, because if there is no supernatural creator and designer, then it's got to be true, no matter how improbable the odds, no matter what the evidence. So in that sense, his mind is all made up in advance. But as a theist, I can follow the evidence where it leads. If you're interested in seeing my interaction with a very prominent evolutionary biologist, take a look at the DVD of the debate that I had last November at Indiana University with Francisco Ayala on Is Intelligent Design Viable? And I think it's a real eye-opener to see interaction with someone of his stature concerning the scientific status of intelligent design and the viability of the explanatory mechanisms of contemporary Darwinism.